today. I'm Christine Cefalo, your host for today's discussion. If you have any questions, please share them in the comments below. Today, I'm joined by Byrne, our Senior Vice President of Operations, Sheri Rhodes, our Chief Customer Officer, and Carin Taylor, our Chief Diversity Officer. As we celebrate Women's History Month, we're excited to have this conversation with you to explore strategies to support women in technology and discuss what you've learned in your careers. Let's kick things off with some introductions. Could you share a little bit about your current role and how you started your career in tech? Chris, let's start with you.
Thanks, Christine, and thank you for including me today. I actually started my career as a software engineer, and I wrote software at IBM for the NASA Space Shuttle project. At Workday, I'm one of the first 50 employees, and I've held a variety of roles as we've grown the company and built our business. Today, I'm the site leader for Workday in Dublin, Ireland, and that means I'm responsible for the site's growth and the career development of our employees. I always seem to have a few roles going at a time, and I also lead a group that works across our product and technology organization, and we work to ensure that the service we run for our customers is healthy and scalable.
That is fantastic. I did not know about NASA. That's amazing. Sheri, over to you next.
Thanks, Christine, and thanks for having me. And I feel really lucky to be part of this group. But I actually joined Workday over 3 years ago as the CIO. I've been in technology before that for a couple of decades, we'll say that, maybe not, maybe a little longer. So I've been in technology a while, but I've actually been in operations consulting. I feel like I've done a lot of jobs in my career. So I think I'm a perfect probably use case when people say, you can bounce around between different roles, gain lots of experience and kind of go outside your comfort zone. And I'm really happy right now to be the Chief Customer Officer. Another new challenge, but an amazing team. So I feel really lucky at Workday.
We feel lucky too. We're so happy to have you here. And Carin, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. And it certainly is my pleasure to be here having this conversation with the three of you. So I am, as you mentioned, our Chief Diversity Officer. And the way that I like to explain my job is, I feel like I'm responsible for bringing out the best in our people, our culture, and our processes so everyone can thrive. But that also means that sometimes I'm a mom at work, sometimes I'm a coach at work, sometimes I'm an advocate at work, sometimes I'm just a supporter. And so I feel like all of us, we wear many, many, many different hats, but most of them have to do with really bringing out the best in people. And so I enjoy that part. I started, actually, my first job in tech was actually in communications. And I don't know if people remember, but there used to be an old telecommunications company called Rome, which was then eventually took over. And it was literally a phone company. They eventually were taken over by military specifications and they became Rome Mil-Spec. So that's really where I started my career before I started working at Cisco, and then ended up at Genentech and then over at Workday about 4 years ago. So it's been a wonderful ride and super excited.
Excellent. Well, thank you all so much for being here. Let's dive in. We all know how critical diversity and inclusion are for the success of business, yet the statistics on women in tech paint a dismal picture. A report from a global nonprofit, AnitaB.org, found women make up only 26.7% of technology workforce. What are some of the key ways to support women in tech? Carin, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And it's interesting that the statistics are still so astonishing, even after having done so much focus on really wanting to bring more women and people of color into tech. And so I think that there are a few things that we're already doing that we need to continue to do, things like mentoring and sponsorship, and really making sure that we're advocating for women that are there. But, Christine, I think that there are also some really, really practical things that we need to continue to do as well that I think help to put women just even a little bit above and beyond as we're thinking about the development of their careers. And a couple of those things are encouraging women to take more risks as an example, right? We know that in general, if men are about 60%, ready for a position, they'll go for it and they'll say, yes, I can do it. Where women, we tend to wait until we're 99 or 100% there. And so really encouraging us to take more risks, I think is an easy way for us to just make sure that women are not being left behind. I think another thing that's really important is giving us actionable feedback, right? And not just telling us you're doing well, keep doing the same thing that you're doing, but really giving us that feedback where we can actually take real action so that we can continue to progress. And then I think the one other thing that I'll say is making sure that we're providing women the opportunities to lead, right? Giving them that opportunity, putting them in positions where they can lead projects or they can lead people, but that expose them to even more opportunities to develop themselves. So I think that those are ways, very practical ways that we can continue to support women in the workplace.
Very great points. Thank you for that. Chris, interested in your insights here, and I'm going to just sort of point something out that I actually remember you were recognized for building really high trust environments in the places that you manage here at Workday. So that's been something I've really admired about you. But let's talk about the topic here. What are some key ways that we can support women in tech?
Yeah, I have some thoughts that really parallel what Carin said, but I'll kind of give my spin on it from my experience, especially recently. This topic is really personal to me. I've received great support over the years. And it's something I try to work on every single day when I do my to-do list, which is long, but this is an important part of it. And I also think I might have answered this question differently at different phases of my career. But where I am now, and with the benefit of hindsight and talking to our engineers and talking to our managers and really working with a lot of different disciplines across the business, I have three thoughts, really. One is absolutely mentoring and sponsoring women in tech that are on the management career ladder. And I recently talked to a group of them, and what they tell me they're struggling the most with is delegation. And how do we help them not be the person who always cleans up after everyone else? And the next thing that I focus on, especially talking to our engineers, and I met with a group of them just last month in one of the most technical parts of our whole organization, and it was such a pleasure to meet with them. But we talked about using our voices, and this is something we have to model. The three of us have to model it, the four of us, all of us have to model using our voices. And really listening to women's voices in technical discussions. Our female engineers say they struggle to be heard. So we want women that speak up, we want men that listen, and that's in every single technical conversation. So those are, two very specific audiences with specific needs. But if I look across the business, what I look for now is this idea of 30% gender balance. Whether that's in your world, Christine, marketing, that can be more female, or my world, tech, which can be more male. I hear from our guys, they want more balanced organizations in tech. They want it. So when there are at least 3 women in a 10-person technical conversation, it just feels more balanced. So we belong to this 30% club here in Ireland, and it's really retrained my eye. And I'm always looking for that 30%. In a group of speakers, you might have at a conference, Christine, in a business meeting, or even in an executive team. And I have to say, it just always brings me joy to see our executive team and to see that diversity. So those are the 3 things that I think are most important right now.
Thank you for sharing. Sheri, what about you?
Well, Chris and Carin, you guys captured it all. No, I absolutely agree with everything that you said. I would just add, I think leading with empathy is hugely important. I think as a company, right, we do that really well, and it's the simple things. I just think if we come back to the fundamentals and the basics, even the one-on-ones we have, it's about, listening and learning and acting upon that, right, in terms of we learning those conversations. And, I try really hard to also, and it's kind of an old thing, right, but lead by example, because, if we're demonstrating balance within our own day-to-day life in terms of, creating time for family, creating time for, maybe that soccer game you need to go to, or, I just think it gives people appreciation, and women specifically, hey, it's okay to have the best of all worlds, which is, both the technical work life as well as, balancing your family. And I also think, so that's kind of within, company, and making sure that we prioritize value, diversity, right? We're measuring it. We look at kind of where we are to Chris's point, right? We look at the numbers in the room, and we try to take action against that. But I also think it's about building external networks, because it's not just about networking within our companies, but it's networking more broadly. And I think that's how we'll make a difference, overall, in terms of women in the workforce and in tech. And so I know I belong to a number of communities, and we actually, even one of them, we have what we call the rock stars. So up and comer females that are technical in nature and are looking for their next role. We try to be careful that we're not poaching, those people across the companies, but if people are volunteering that maybe they're ready to step outside their current role, we definitely look at that. So I think that combination.
That's great.
I love the fact that, Sheri, you brought up this notion of leading with empathy also, because one of the things that we have all recognized, at least over the last couple of years, is that we all need to lean in with leading with empathy and compassion, because we are all dealing with people who are dealing with very varied experiences in the workplace or at home. And so meeting employees, and particularly women, where they're at, when it comes to not only their work responsibilities, but their home responsibilities and everything else they have going around becomes really important. So I love the fact that you brought that into the conversation of just thinking about how do we meet people where they are, because as we think about mental health, and we think about social justice, and we think about things like ESG, all of those things are weighing on and playing a part in the roles that we're playing as women in the world. And so I love the fact that you brought that up about meeting us where we are, because that's an important component of it as well.
I love that too. There was something that came up a few times in the last few minutes that I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into, and that's the roles of a mentor and a sponsor. What have you learned from the mentors and sponsors you've had throughout your career? I've definitely had both as well, and they're incredibly important, as are all of our networks, as we're all talking about here. Let's maybe, Sheri, this time start with you.
Yeah. I've been really fortunate to have some amazing bosses, peers, right? People that work for me. I feel like you get feedback in all of those places to make us more successful leaders. But I would say it's, to me, it's around being vulnerable. And I have an example, right? Believing in the company, people have taught me, and surrounding yourself with people you trust. And you don't find that necessarily at every company, but when you do, right, then you've really hit the gold. And I would say, I'll give you an example, and Christine, you were there, right? But, I can't say that I'm a person that loves to get up and, drive the keynotes and, in front of thousands of people. And we talked about maybe that's not our favorite thing to do. And, so we recently had an event at Workday last week, and you and I both had a chance to get up there. And, it wasn't as bad as I thought. And I thought about it after. I'm like, I thought I did average, right? And, but the reason is because I love the company. I love the people I was with, and I believed in what I was saying. So that's what, mentors and sponsors that have worked with me, right? If all of those things together, you're willing to be more vulnerable, right? You're willing to take risk because you feel like, right, you have a supportive environment. So, I think it's been hugely meaningful in my career, and I would just encourage others to do the same.
You did do a great job. And we thank you for taking the stage. I know it's hard for many of us. Carin, what about you?
Yeah, I think I love mentoring and sponsorship, and I think they play critical roles in how we develop people these days. As I think about like the role for me, like if I think about mentoring, I think about the mentors that I have had, but I also think about my role as a mentor as well. And there are two of those, and you will get benefits out of leaning into mentorship, especially when you're mentoring other people. I love that because it gives me an opportunity to get to know people kind of beyond the surface, but then also to help to guide them, right, in terms of things that they may want to improve upon. But for me, mentorship is the real game changer when it comes to elevating our careers, right? If we think about the difference between mentoring and sponsoring, mentorship is more of a two-way kind of relationship where the mentee may be trying to get some experience or get knowledge from their mentor in terms of guiding them. But when it comes to sponsorship is a bit of a different relationship where as the sponsee or protege, I have to lean in and I actually have to do most of the work so that my sponsor can actually see and advocate for the things that I'm doing. One of the things that I have found out about, especially about sponsorship, is that sponsors remain committed to your development long term, right? You may have a relationship with a sponsor and that person may be advocating for you and helping to guide your career or exposing you to their network or different talent. But you also have to be that person who leans in. And as you continue to develop your career, that sponsor kind of comes along with you. And so as I reflect on some of the sponsors that I've had that were in my life 15 years ago and were sponsoring me then and who are still helping to guide me today, I love the fact that those relationships remain strong over time. But I do think that, you have to lean into both mentorship and sponsorship as a way to which we continue to develop women in the workplace for sure.
Thank you, Carin. Hey, can I ask you one quick follow-up? And then Chris, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic too. So Carin, if I don't have a sponsor, right? If I'm watching this and I don't have a sponsor, is that something that I can ask somebody for?
Yeah, it is. However, you have to be careful about asking for sponsorship because remember, sponsorship comes into play when you are proving yourself and you are a strong performer and you are ready and at a level in which your career continues to need to be developed, right? And so if you have a trusted advisor that knows your work, you might be able to kind of reach out and say, hey, I might be stuck a little bit here and I need some sponsorship. But if a sponsor doesn't know you, it's really hard to sponsor you or advocate for you if they don't know your work. Right. And so if you're thinking about asking for a sponsor, think about asking it for someone who would naturally be able to see your work and be able to advocate for you and your positioning. But yeah, you can certainly ask for one, but it certainly is the natural relationship that honestly evolves over time. It's really hard to ask someone, if I don't know you or Sheri or Chris, it would be really hard for me to go to you and say, can you be my sponsor if you don't know anything about me, right? So there has to be that relationship there as well.
Makes sense. Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Chris, over to you.
I think I could listen to Carin Taylor talk all day long. And I love hearing your perspective on things. Thanks so much. And,
thank you.
I've learned so much from watching strong leaders succeed, and you can learn a lot from watching weak leaders who will eventually fail. But, as I go around my day, I always feel like my mentors and sponsors are in me, and I hear their voices, and sometimes I hear myself telling actually their stories as my stories. And, I had this teacher, Sister Sarah, she was my high school math teacher, and she encouraged me to go into computer science when I was locked in on library science. And then at IBM, when I worked on the space shuttle, there were two women, Cheryl DeShiel and Diane Jablonski. They made such an impact on me. And, I still to this day use things I learned from those people. And of course, at PeopleSoft, my husband and I both learned so much from how Dave Duffield builds companies. It was so amazing to have a front row seat there and for myself here at Workday. And I love that the company has programs to develop leaders because you cannot figure this stuff all out on your own. I broke my arm last year and I've been in physical therapy and I watch what the guy does to me and it hurts so badly. but I think I wouldn't have the use of my arm without this guy. I wouldn't know how to get to full function. And so, that's what your sponsors and your mentors can do for you, and be in a company that wants to support those programs. But with all of that, I do want to give you a specific example, and that was when I really had to seek sponsors, mentors, even an outside coach, because I came to work in Europe and I had to adapt. I had to learn the culture, I had to listen more, I had to talk less. I had to really make sure that I understood how things worked and not continue some of the habits that I had in an American company, especially in a Silicon Valley company. And so that's really, I think, helped me a lot by recognizing that I needed the help and going and getting it.
That's great. I want to stay with you for 1 second, Chris, and ask you a follow-on question. And it's about advice. It sounds like you have a really great network around you. So what is the best advice you've received, and what advice would you give to those who are looking to advance their careers in technology?
I think this could be a whole podcast. It really could, just going around the table, giving pieces of advice. But I picked out one that I thought was very helpful for me. And I heard it a lot early on in my career. And it was that don't be the person who does all the work for someone else who takes all the credit, and they have the title and they get the salary. And I still will guide people that I mentor with that advice today. But I think more importantly, I'll go back to something Sheri said: surround yourself with good people. Be in a place that wants you to succeed through hard work and high integrity. And inside yourself, when you're fretting or you're worrying and you're taking all that energy, just take it and use it on your project, or work on your mind, or work on your body. If I could have all those hours of career anxiety back now, oh my goodness, the time that I worried. So hold yourself to a high standard. That's great. That's good advice. But you have to be kind to yourself too.
Yes, really great reminder. Carin, what about you?
I love that, Chris. So look, I think the advice that I would give is something that someone said to me once, and it is, have the confidence in yourself to overcome any challenge. And the reason for me that this was really important is because as a woman, sometimes I lose my confidence. Sometimes, and it could be even at this level in my career, sometimes I doubt myself. Sometimes I doubt my abilities. Sometimes I doubt how I'm coming across to other people. And so for me, grounding myself in who I am and being comfortable and confident with that is super important. And I want to bring this one up because as women, we tend to lack confidence when it comes to just being leaders, I think, in general. And we're always doubting ourselves and thinking that we're playing the imposter syndrome. And the truth of the matter is we have to have much more confidence in ourselves and look back on all of our accomplishments and the great things that we've done and lean on all of those things as opposed to the few things where we may have had missteps, right? Or where we may not have, or you can even call them failures sometimes. But don't always focus on the failures. Think about all the positive and build yourself up from that way, because I think that'll help us with that issue of waiting until we're 100% ready to actually go for something that we know that we are very capable of doing. So for me, it would be that. And then if I can just really share, Chris, one of the experiences that I actually had was when my confidence was shot so bad that I couldn't move. Literally, I couldn't think of how to go forward and get myself out of that space. And it came back to reconnecting with myself and what I knew my capabilities were more so than anything else. So when you feel like you're kind of losing that sense of confidence, kind of come back inward, surround yourself, as Sheri and Chris said, surround yourself with people in that network who can help to lift you up as well. And as women, we certainly have an opportunity to do that.
I was walking back from physical therapy today, and I was going down a little lane, and there was some graffiti that I almost took a picture of for this, and it said, surround yourself by people who inspire you to do better. I thought that was just a lovely sentiment ahead of this session today.
I love that.
I love that too. Sheri, what about you? What's the best advice you've received?
Yeah, well, I love, of course, what the ladies have said, but and I would just add, and it's maybe just even kind of the other side of the coin of what Carin was talking about, is like sometimes I feel like we have to be so perfect, right? We feel like we have to have all the boxes checked, or we do the assignment to the, to perfection. And one of my bosses once said, just ask for help, and not necessarily because you need the help, but it shows that you're relatable. Right? If you're an Ivy Tower that you do the job better than anybody else, that's not necessarily a connection kind of with your teams or with the people that you work with. So I thought it was great advice. I took it to heart, right? In terms of just invite input, invite feedback. You may have a good answer. There might be a better one out there. You don't know, and so just don't think of that as you're any less. It's just you're collaborating and you're working across your peers well.
Yeah, I think that we've talked about mentorship and sponsorship, and the peer network is so important too. And lifting each other up and supporting each other. And it's just, I'm super thankful to have you all in my network, and really appreciate you being here to share your perspectives on this really important topic. Thank you to everybody who's tuned in today as well. And please join us next month for our Workday chats on the future of ESG. Thank you all.
Thanks, Christine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine.